Does Kotaku technically brand itself as a gaming journalism outlet? Because that's always absolute tosh.
If a terrible article has come out, it's a safe bet that it's come from Kotaku. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Speech Check. I am Sam.
And I'm Matt.
And this is episode 29.
And today we're going to talk about Lord of the Rings Gollum, Nintendo's cease and desist, and we've got some comments to respond to from last week's episode.
But before we talk about any of that stuff, Matt, what have you been playing?
Well, I've not actually got a lot to talk about this week. I haven't actually played that many games. I played some Consuming Shadow over the weekend, which is a small game by Yahtzee, as in like zero punctuation Yahtzee. I don't think I spoke about this last episode, did I? No, it was World of Horror last time.
This is new to me.
Yeah, I've had it. I watched my mate play it one time, and it looked really, really good. So I picked it up for about a fiver. And it's like a roguelike where you play a detective in England during a Lovecraftian apocalypse, or like on the cusp of a Lovecraftian apocalypse. So you have to travel from village to village, doing little dungeons, like side-scrolling dungeons, whilst you gather clues to perform the ritual to banish the elder god that's invading.
If I could custom make a game for you, that is a game I would make for you.
It is right up my street, and it's very fun. And it has the best detective system, or the best detective mechanic, I should say, that I've ever seen in a game like that. Because you have you've got like a table, like a 4x6 table, and you can fill it out yourself by clicking on each of the squares and like cycling what should go in that entry. And as you move through the world, you gain clues. So it'll be like, oh, this god is associated with this rune, and then the next clue will be this rune is associated with this color, and from that you have to try and work out which of the three gods that is attacking is, which of the three gods that are present. One of them will be the attacker, one of them will be the assisting god, and one of them will be an enemy to the invading god. So you have to try and pick the right one to banish, and if you pick the wrong one, then you effectively lose and get a different ending. But I just really like that system of it drip feeding you clues, and then you have to make the notes yourself in game, and it gives you like a mechanic to do that. I just really, really enjoy it.
I was about to say, but you answered the question: do they allow you to get it wrong? Because I know with a lot of games where you have detective or solve the puzzle, where they just go, "Oh, no, that's not the answer. Try again." Whereas I like games that punish, quote unquote, you for not getting the answer right. It's like, no, get it right.
Yeah, you can banish the wrong god of the three gods, which will give you a different ending, or you can just banish the wrong god entirely. There's nothing to do with it, and that'll be the bad ending. And yeah, and you can fail by dying, going insane, running out of time. The whole game is timed, and each of the, I think it's 4 characters has like a different time limit. And because you have to drive from one place to another, like a lot of the game is set in your car as you're driving from one city to the other, like getting text messages and trying to figure out where to go next. So it's got that pressure going for it as well. But yeah, I definitely recommend the Consuming Shadow if you're into roguelikes, detective work, and side-scrollery. And I've been playing a bit of D&D. Played some D&D last week, which I haven't done in a little while. And I DM'd as well over the weekend, which I am not very good at, but I'm trying to get better at. And I still find it quite fun. A bit of a laugh. But yeah, that's me. Not many games to talk about this week. What about yourself?
Just jump back before I get onto myself.
Oh, okay.
As someone who doesn't really play D&D, do you prefer being a DM, or do you prefer? You said that you don't feel like you're that good at it, but is it because you tend to not do that and you prefer for other people to be the DMs, or you just have not done it that many times?
I've done it a few times, but I just tend to not find it as satisfying as being a player. And I think, I mean, that could be due to my inexperience. And I have had some really cool moments, like when you craft a really interesting encounter and the players really enjoy it, or something that a scene, if you will, that you plan for comes off in just the right way, or like you get just the right amount of drama or just the right amount of fear, and it all just kind of sits together. And there is fun to be had from the rampant improv because I don't run my game. I'm super fast and loose with the rules and the setting and stuff, and I just generally let people have fun. And sometimes that leads to like insane scenarios that are really funny that you couldn't explain to someone that wasn't there if you tried. But there's something about just being a player and like really getting into just your character, like having your character, understanding their backstory, their motivations, acting within that, and yeah, I just personally enjoy that a little bit more. But maybe in time, I'll flip.
In my head, it's quite similar to planning like a party or a social event, in that often when you do plan something like that, like a house party or a dinner party or whatever, you often don't enjoy it during, and it's the payoff of it post thing where everyone says, "I had a really good time at your party." It's like, oh, I'm relieved now that I was a good DM.
Yeah, I can see that. Some people say that control freaks enjoy being DMs generally, but I don't know how cruel that is to people out there that do actually like being a DM, or how true it is. Maybe people align with that. I don't know.
It's funny you say that, actually, because I watched not a video related to that, but I was watching a YouTuber who was also happened to be a DM, and when he was asked about, a very popular DM among his friends, and they said, oh, how much you must put loads of time and effort into planning the campaigns and stuff, and he was like, surprisingly, no. Like, I'm making a lot of it up as I go along, and if you think it is planned, that's good, but often the best times is a lot of spontaneity. It's almost like improv, I guess,
Yeah,
for a lot of people.
I think the rule of thumb is every hour you plan will probably be like an hour and 10 game time, but you can pad it out by letting them do weird shit and just letting it roll. Like you said about like spontaneity and improv.
But I'll actually get on to what I'm playing now.
Oh yeah, sorry. Do you want me to I'll throw it back over to you? What? Go on, Sam.
You don't have to re-segue. It's fine.
No, okay, all right. I'll let it flow.
The art of conversation is to ask the question you've been asked, but it's fine. Don't worry about it. Anyway, not that anybody asked, but I've been consumed this week by the Grand Theft Auto Definitive Edition, specifically GTA 3, as for those that don't know, contains GTA 3, GTA Vice City, and GTA San Andreas. I thoroughly enjoyed all these games. They were a very big mess when they first came out, but it's been at least, a year and a half, maybe even 2, since they've officially been out.
I think so. Yeah.
And they're majoritively fixed. I've still had some weird jank, but it's been like funny jank as opposed to like game breaking. I haven't done my save file erased, anything like that.
Is that the trilogy where it ended up being a port of the mobile version because they lost the source code?
Yes, there's a very good video.
Okay.
I can't remember who the guy did it, but there's a very good like documented YouTube video. They used AI upscaling as well, which is why some signs ended up backwards and weird. And
Oh Jesus.
yeah, they tried to cut a lot of corners to save time because they wanted to release it on the 20th anniversary of GTA 3. So there was an unnecessary time window from them. Like, they could have just waited an extra year. It would have been nice for that to come out at that end, but it's like, do you have it at a nice time, or would you rather wait a year and it actually be decent?
I mean, sure, unnecessary time window, but it was always going to be the 20th anniversary, right? It didn't exactly sneak up on them. Like
Yeah, it was
they
like,
knew that
"Oh,
was
hang on."
coming.
So they walked into the office one day and checked the calendar.
Yeah. Oh god, it's 3 days away. Quick, get the AI on it.
Oh wait, it was 3 days away 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've just been playing that. It's been very nostalgic, which there's a weird element of nostalgia when like you were playing a game that you definitely shouldn't have been playing. Because I was like, what, 10, 11 when that came out? But I used to sneak into my uncle's room, who had it, whilst he'd be out, and I didn't want to let him know that I was playing it, so I would never save it. So I started that game probably about 100 times. But yeah, I've just been going through and actually properly 100%ing it. But it's weird in that there's a very optimum way to do things, because there's 3 islands, and as you progress through the game, you move from an island and you essentially screw over the previous people that you were working with. So that island essentially becomes hostile.
Okay.
So if you need to go back to do collect any of the packages or the collectibles, or there's like stunt jumps you can do. Rampages are particularly hard if you leave them until the end. Once you've made a gang hostile, they get like upgraded. Essentially, they get better guns. So like the mafia, when you go back to try and take them on, they have like shotguns. They can just blow your cars up. So
Wow.
yeah,
Going for the
there's
100% is ridiculous, mate. Like, those games, that takes some fucking doing.
there's a lot to do, but I've actually enjoyed it. And GTA, I was chatting with my friends about it actually because we just for some reason are all playing it at the same time, uncoordinated. It's a bit of a serendipity. And we've been saying that so there's 100 collectibles throughout the game, just things to pick up. But every time you get 10, you get a weapon spawn at your safe house. So it's giving you a reward every 10. So it's not like, oh, I've got to wait and collect all these till I get to level 100 to actually earn something. So I think that's we spoke about this on an episode ages ago about how to do collectibles right.
Yeah.
And that is how to do it right.
Incremental reward.
Yeah, to keep me going, be like, give me that carrot on a stick. Don't put it like half a mile away down the road.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's been the majority of my time. I also played another game. It was a recent release last week called Killer Frequency, which I'm not going to delve into too much because I plan to do a review on it, and I want you to hold me to that.
All right.
I've set up the script to it. I'll give you a little taster.
Go on.
It is a walking simulator, but I feel like that's a derogatory term. So it's a first person game.
Okay.
Not a shooter. And you're a late night radio host, and people are calling in and they're being stalked by a serial killer, and you have to communicate them and find out what situation they're in and solve puzzles so they don't get killed.
Sounds like a fun setup.
Yeah, and you can just make the wrong decision, and it's also about identifying who the next target is, and if you do it in a incorrect order, or if you fail to save people, when you then speak to people in the future, they're like, "Oh, that person would have known that, but we can't talk to them now." So it kind of like has a branching path. It's quite good.
It's putting me in mind for some reason of like new wave night trap almost.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah, it's I'm spilling too much.
Oh, okay.
It's good. I'll hold it there. It's good. I would recommend it. Yeah, but say no more. In depth. I'll get in depth to it in an actual video we put on the channel. And my final thing is I've been playing very, very late to the party, but I've been playing the Phoenix Wright Trilogy. So that's Ace Attorney, Trials and Tribulations, and Justice for All. And I got these at the behest of Danielle. She was like, I want to play some. She played them when they were back on the DS. She enjoyed it. She played at least the first one. And she was like, I enjoyed those. And they were on sale. So I was like, yeah, sure. It's one of those things I've always wanted to try and just never had a reason. And now you saying you want to play them, yes. And they're insane and amazing. I'm a little bit annoyed I've waited this long to play them, but they really lean into their like heavy anime Japanese-ness. Like in one case, there was a guy, Jack Hammer and Will Powers.
Okay. You see, I've known about Phoenix Wright. Like, I think he's been memed out with the whole objection thing and that. But I don't understand what the game is. Like, I've never played it, and I've never been compelled to pick it up. So you reckon it's worth playing?
Well, the game normally is 30 quid. And so you're paying £10 per game. And it is worth that. But often it will be part of, because it's Capcom, you can usually find it in some kind of collection sale for at least 15, and it's definitely worth that. I would pay that happily.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
It's essentially like a visual novel, but like the first few cases, or the first couple, I should say, you're like, some of these jumps are insane. It's like, why would that equal that? But then we're on the fourth one at the moment, and now I'm starting to get the line of thinking.
Okay.
So it's weird. But it is good. Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see that would go. Like, yeah, it's just good. Just play it.
Understood.
But yeah, that is what I have been playing. Not that anybody asked.
Hold it! Objection! Take that!
So that's enough about what we've been playing. But Matt now is going to tell us what has been released. Matt, go forth.
Here they come. I've got some good ones. This week. Okay, so first up is Lord of the Rings Gollum.
Oh, Christ.
Coming at us from Daedalic Entertainment, released the 25th of May 2023. critic review score 40, user review score 2.5, and that is generous. Trust me, let me get into it.
That is 2 points too high.
Yes, I've been watching quite a lot of stuff on this and reading up on it, and my god, it's bad. So, the setup, you play as Gollum in between the events of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings while he is in prison in Barad-dûr. It is a unique story written in collaboration with Tolkienian experts, people who read and love the Silmarillion, essentially.
Like, even among nerds, that's quite nerdy.
That's all the way.
A Middle-earth expert.
That's like...
That's a child line.
Yeah, I LARP at weekends as well. Come on, love. So they've essentially colonial marines themselves, if you catch what I'm saying there. They've got in-canon potential, and they've just spaffed it up the wall. So yeah, you're Gollum. You know, what do we all know Gollum to be? A little sneaky boy, kind of violent, kind of crazy. And about half, 2/3 of the game is like a prison life simulator. You just run around this prison in Barad-dûr doing menial tasks, collecting things, running from one place to another. That's kind of like I could politely describe to be the exploration segments and the puzzle segments. You just go somewhere, do something, then go to another place and do another thing.
Just before, sorry to stop your flow.
Go on, hit me.
But who, upon that description, who, even someone that doesn't play games, would go, that sounds like a great idea? That is something I would need to make into an interactive experience.
I can almost see the pitch for it, and see
like if you were trying to break out, but I know a lot of it is not that. He's like, I'm perfectly happy here.
Yeah, just like, oh, this is my life now. I've made friends. This is what I do, prison stuff now. Why even focus on that part of the adventure? Why not like twist it from when he's Smeagol becoming Gollum or something? I don't know, get really meta with it. Do like a little Nightmares thing where you have to play through nightmare sections as Gollum while Smeagol does stuff in his waking life while he's trying to like fight the obsession of the ring. There you go, I've just made a better game for you. 20 seconds. Pay up.
There's a lot of creative playroom there. So the fact that they went with possibly the dullest option they could pick is surprising.
Gollum in prison. Yeah. So the running backwards and forwards and doing menial tasks, that's your exploration gameplay, let's say. There's then platforming, parkour. Gollum is a scampery chap, you know, he moves pretty fast. And he has all the things that you'd expect Gollum to be able to do, like jump, mantle, climb, run on walls, like Prince of Persia style.
Oh, okay, I think they're like Spider Golem.
I mean, like borderline Spider Golem. The issue is they've done or it looks like, I should say, their platforming design is from about 10 years ago. So it's like, here's this one route where you do all of these things in order, and then you get to the end of this one platforming challenge. It's not like you use his platforming capabilities to overcome dynamic challenges in the world. You just like go in a straight line. If you try and do something that the designer hasn't organized for you to do, you fall to your death. And that's
I'm a fan of platformers, and I feel like, yeah, like you say, we've moved on from that. Unless you're going to have one route, that route needs to be like ultra solid, and you have to learn it has to be like Dark Souls-esque platforming.
Like I mentioned Prince of Persia glibly then, but I would gladly play the Sands of Time right now. Like, that game is a fucking good game. That's great. So you can do linear platforming well. You just have to design it very carefully. But yeah, platforming sucks. Also, Gollum's control is apparently very bad. He's like floaty and weird, and he doesn't do what you think he'll do at the right time. So a lot of time you're wrestling with how he's actually controlling. Not fun. Then there's stealth sections. Stealth sections equate to there's an incredibly stupid enemy that's going to turn around in circles and look for you, and you need to go from one section of shadow to another to get past him. You can execute some enemies if they are orcs and they are not wearing helmets. Those are the only enemies that you can kill with a strangle attack, and you can throw rocks at metal objects that will make a noise and cause the orc to go and check it out. So really, it suffers from exactly the same problem as a platforming, where you have one beginning, one end, and one route to get to that end. It's not creative. You're not using Gollum's abilities. You're just experiencing the story, quote unquote, which is Gollum in prison. Not great. They do also have sections where you can speak as either Smeagol or Gollum, and I couldn't quite work this out from watching gameplay or reading up about it.
I've seen this too, yeah, and it seems like a morality choice thing. But if that, I don't think that has any bearing on the game. It's just, do you want to respond in a nice way or a nasty way?
Yeah, I think some people, or some of the players I was watching, thought it was a puzzle. Like you had to answer correctly to finish that dialogue encounter. Others thought it had no impact whatsoever. And like you said, I think it was intended to have some kind of morality, but no one's mentioned how that comes into the game in any way whatsoever. There's also a companion system where you have to breed a bird at like the 1/3 way through the game, and then you have to guide it around, and also you have to guide a man around. You make you've got this dude that joins you in your cell, and you've got to help you to solve puzzles. Kind of weird. Don't know why that's there.
Can I just say you sounded ecstatic when you were like, you got to breed this bird? I don't know. It's just a pain in the ass.
When I was watching, I was looking at it and like looking at all these like half-baked mechanics and missed opportunities with Lord of the Rings IP, and I was like, why the hell? Why is he breeding a bird in prison? And why have you put any development time or effort into that when your basic controls are still broken? Like, where are your priorities?
Yeah, it seemed like they had a list of things they wanted to put in the game, and they started all of them and finished none of them.
I think that is a really succinct way to put the entire experience. Do you want me to put the cherry on top of this cake of warm shit?
Please.
It's 42 quid. So AA price, let's say. Current games market.
Remind everyone that Phoenix Wright Trilogy is £30.
There we go. Is he a sponsor? Is Phoenix Wright a sponsor of this episode?
Objection.
42 quid, the regular edition, yeah, so at AA price, I'd say. Deluxe edition, 52 quid. You may ask, what's in the deluxe edition, Matt?
What is in the deluxe edition, Matt?
Well, I was going to say it anyway, now you've asked me and I'll say it anyway. It has some of the strangest add-ons. Elvish VO for the elves that are in the game. So they replace their VO from English to Elvish. I can't remember what the Elvish language is called in Middle-earth. I keep wanting to say Sylvan, but that's Dungeons and Dragons. But yeah.
I mean, that's worth £10 on its own, surely.
Exactly. You get a lore compendium with unfinished menuing. You get an art showcase with unfinished menuing. So it just doesn't really work the way you think a menu should work. And it's literally just highlighting words on a screen, and it works weird. And you get emotes.
I'm sensing a theme. Do these work?
They do, but they're jank as hell. You will clip through everything. They look borderline unfinished. That's a tenner on top of your single-player game for emotes and lore.
I'd rather have the tenner.
I was shook because when I first started looking this up, right, I was like, oh, okay, maybe it's like a plucky little studio, got their hands on an IP, they're trying real hard. Oh wait, what? It's over 40 quid. Oh, okay, they've got a deluxe edition. Never mind. I lost all respect at that.
If you had to play this or Redfall, play, not buy.
Front to back.
Yeah, from beginning to end.
I might surprise you. I'd probably say, oh no, actually it'd be Redfall. Redfall would be easier. I was thinking for the like Gollum might have that so bad it's good effect, but it would also be so fucking frustrating. It wouldn't be worth it.
I feel like from what I've seen, Redfall could be like hilariously bad, and if you play it in co-op, I've just seen people who are just like, this game's a joke.
Yeah, you could just like laugh your way through it, blowing everything away. Next up, the big one. Diablo IV coming at us from Blizzard Entertainment, 6th of June 2023. Metacritic reviewer score 87. When I was taking these notes, there was no user score, but I assure you it's probably hovering around a 9 right now. The reason why there was no user score is because there was a pre-release special edition that gave you the game a few days early. So if you played in the beta, I think, and had pre-ordered the game, you got in a little bit early. And it looks like it's pretty damn good. It's got that Blizzard level graphical fidelity. The cutscenes are fantastic. Audio design, all that, very, very good. The story is said to be the best so far in a Diablo game, which isn't saying much for a game that just sets you up to dungeon crawl. I know D3 tried to have something a bit more flowery going on, but it didn't really pull it off. But this is very good, like complex characters.
I was going to say, I didn't think Diablo was a very story-heavy game.
I mean, I played Diablo 2, but I was younger. All I remember is something bad is happening, go kill the thing that's going to do it. And then Diablo 1
that's
was
all
like,
you need, right? That is all that you didn't really need an excuse to be like, go do this thing, be cool and raid dungeons.
Yeah, it's basically it. Go to this evil place and stop it being evil. That was what I got from the lore of Diablo 2. I'm sure I get crucified by some people for saying that, but that was all I took in. The graphics and tone are good, and they harken back to D2. So Diablo 3 was kind of panned a little bit for its more cartoonized aesthetic. They went for like high contrast colors. They tried to make the game a bit more digestible by a wider audience. They tried to just widen that demographic essentially, because D2 was for a certain kind of person. But D4 seems to want to go for the grimdark, and it's pulling it off fantastically. Has a large, persistent open world with a number of cities that give the experience a sense of scale and discovery. And in that overworld, other players can join you and get amongst it in overworld fights. So there are special bosses that will pop up, and any player, kind of like an MMO, can jump in and help you out there.
I think that sounds quite World of Warcrafty. Again, not that I know. I haven't played 2 seconds of WoW or Diablo, so I am blind here. But it sounds like what I know those games to be.
I think it's like bridging a gap a little bit. So you've got that World of Warcraft influence with the overworld, people joining you, but then when you jump into a dungeon, you can do it co-op, same couch co-op as well, I believe. You can do it co-op, but when you go into those dungeons, you lose that MMO style thing. When you're in that overworld, literally anyone could be running around. I think regionally or server based, so you haven't got like literally thousands and thousands of people running around all at once in this overworld, but you get what I mean. Like it's populated by other players. The skill tree looks pretty damn good. It's positioned itself between D3 and D2, which is somewhat of a theme for this game. They've taken learnings from D2, learnings from D3, and made a better game than both. So, non-linear skill tree. Every time you get to a pip, you get to pick a different area to specialize in, and you need a certain number of specializations or points spent in the skill tree to move on to the next like major pip or major skill. And that's a little bit different to D3, where you'd unlock these skills, but then you could shuffle them on the fly, like completely rearrange yourself whenever you choose. You could just change your game style completely. And in D2, you were locked the fuck in. Like if you pick something, you pick something, deal with it. It was like old school, actions have consequences. D4, there's a respec mechanic you have access to at all times that costs a little bit of gold. So you can always respec yourself to try out different builds, but once you lock that build in, that's it. Like you have to go for that, which I like quite a lot. Gameplay, Diablo, isometric kill everything. It's not changed. They have custom legendary items now, which will complement your build. So people who played a lot of Diablo probably have experience of grinding for certain items that would spec into their build. Now you can get crafting resources, at least in like the mid-late game, where you'll just get a piece of armor or a weapon that will lend itself to your build and like lean into the skills you've got. That isn't better than the loot you get from beating bosses, so there is still going to be a heavy focus on that grind for proper end game content, all the raids and stuff and nightmare tier dungeons, all this kind of thing. You're still going to want to do those to get the highest tier loot, but it's cool that you can now make your own that will just give you a little bit of an edge.
It sounds like they've struck a good balance between, it's like, the good stuff is here, but if you want to do a grind and be safe, you can do that. And it's almost annoying that they've got the balance quite good, because I want to not like Activision. They keep making very good games, particularly with Diablo.
That's like, I think that's one of my notes in this bullet point list is just pretend it's not made by Activision Blizzard, because it is really good and it looks really fun, but you can't turn your head away from everything. The companion system is better now. Like the companions in D2 and D3, at least for me, were just walking areas of damage. That was all they were. They were like a little turret that followed you around. I never really cared about them. But in this, they have their own backstories, their own motivations, side quests. They go on character arcs. They're actually fully fleshed out. Seems pretty awesome. Yeah, like I think you hit the nail on the head. It's just a good game. It's just a really good game. And if you enjoyed any Diablo before this, you will definitely enjoy this. If you enjoy isometric action games, or I should say isometric action role-playing games, you will certainly enjoy this. This is like cream of the crop level, I feel. Blizzard hasn't entirely been able to shed its snake skin for this release, sadly, as there is an expensive skin shop in the game, but you can basically ignore it. It doesn't really tie into the gameplay in any way, so if you want to spend 20 quid on a spangly helmet, you can, but it is not necessary.
Just a side note before we move on, it's interesting in that description that you said gameplay Diablo, and I knew what you meant. So it's interesting that just a game is that recognizable from what it is known to be. Like I'd never played it, and I know exactly what that game will be.
Yeah, for sure. Like it almost invented the genre in a way, or popularized it. It's one of those things. It's kind of like how World of Warcraft is synonymous with MMO.
Yeah, or like, I don't want to say it, but like Soulsborne. But like if someone says it's like Dark Souls, people know you know what you're getting into. You know what world you're stepping into.
Sam, you could have said Metroidvania.
I could,
and you went for Soulsborne. Who are you?
I could, but I know you hate Metroidvania in particular. So I was trying to spare you some rage.
So I now we're going off on this. I like Metroidvanias. I don't like the title that is put with it. Don't like that.
Oh yeah, I know. Because again, both fantastic series in their own right, which is why they've survived 20 plus years. It's kind of like the walking simulator. It's just a bit of just slap that name on it. Kind of like the roguelite stuff. I imagine a lot of people slap that on stuff, and it's just like, but that doesn't. You're trying to disguise it as good, or people think, but by putting it in that category, that it just earns goodness. It's like no. You don't get to say you're like Metroid if you're just in if you're in that kind of environment, you know.
Yeah, I think having that like catch-all term for a game is just so reductive, and it doesn't actually tell you that much about the game you're about to play. Like Hollow Knight and Hades, I think were both described as like Metroidvania-esque, because there are some parts in Hades where you go back and get different stuff and unlock different dialogue options or something.
Such a vast description that it's like you're both telling me something and also nothing about this game.
Yeah. Oh, we're off on one. Right.
Yeah, sorry, I'll let you move on to the final one.
So, my last one, which I have interest in, I don't know how many others will. System Shock 2023, coming at us from Night Dive Studios, 30th of May, 2023, unsurprisingly, given the name. Metacritic review score is 77, and the user score is 8.3. This is a faithful update of System Shock, one of the progenitors of the immersive sim genre and the predecessor to BioShock. The devs have done, well, it's Night Dive. Night Dive are fantastic. They've done this to quite a few games now, and they always update them really, really faithfully.
Yeah, I recognise the name. What else have they done?
So Night Dive have reimagined Shadow Man, Turok 2, Turok.
That is what I know them from. Yeah, that's where I've seen their name.
God, they've done absolutely loads.
Yeah, they did Turok and Turok 2 Seeds of Evil. They did updates to, on the Xbox store is where I've seen them.
Seeds of Evil as well. That takes me back. I absolutely loved Seeds of Evil. I thought it was a great game. Okay, I'm not going to get distracted. System Shock. That's what we're talking about. So they've updated the graphics, updated the UX, sound design, everything you would expect from a modern shooter, quote unquote, or puzzle shooter, you could say, for System Shock, is here. But they've kept all of the core DNA of System Shock in there. So every level is a maze. The entire ship is out to kill you. You really have to carefully manage your resources when you're going around. Borderline survival horror-y, but there are always multiple ways to get through encounters. Has light RPG elements, I believe. And it seems very, very good. Very good indeed. They've also included another bit of quality of life, a selective difficulty system. So you can pick which parts of the game are hard and which are easy, and that will be puzzles, quest missions, combat in general, and cyberspace. So they have faithfully recreated the cyberspace sections as well, which is a bit questionable because they were like the worst parts of System Shock 1, but they've kept them in.
They were faithful to both the good and bad parts of the original game.
Yeah, I'd say this game is just it. Everything I'm hearing about it, everything I'm reading about it, solid, really solid. And if you have any interest in BioShock or System Shock, definitely worth a pickup. Going to finish the releases off with our Game Pass rundown. Recently added, The Big Con, Slayers X, which I actually played, forgot to mention, it's fucking nuts. Car Mechanics Simulator, Far World Pioneers, Chicory, A Colourful Tale, Railway Empire 2, and Planet of Luna. Leaving Game Pass is Portal Bridge Constructor, Chorus, Total War 3 Kingdoms, Mortal Shell Enhanced Edition, Man-Eater, and Serious Sam 4. So if you want to play any of those, or you've nearly completed some of those, go to your Game Pass place, whether that is your PC or Xbox. Check it out. So that's recent releases. Sam, tell us about recent news.
I shall. The first one, very tiny one, maybe even trivial, but it's more related to the point that we made possibly last episode or maybe the one before, that there is going to be a movie about John Madden. That you may recognize that name. That is Madden, NFL Madden.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems very likely it's not set in stone yet, but that Will Ferrell is going to play Mr. Madden in this biopic. Yeah, a bit of a strange thing, but I think he's really into his football/sports in general.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
But I would think it would be more of a. I wouldn't think this would be a comedy. It's going to be almost documentary-ish in style, like a bit dramatic, a bit semi-serious.
Is he trying to Steve Carell it, where he was that Olympic gymnast dude?
Foxcatcher?
Yeah.
Yeah, potentially. I couldn't name a serious Will Ferrell film that I've seen. Didn't think you could define Elf as serious.
I'd say no.
But apparently the film will focus on his transition from commentating in the NFL to being like, hey, you should make a video game about me and give me all the money related to that. Now, very loosely related, but is this the very small startings of the video game cinematic universe? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, we made this prediction on a previous episode. We said the beginning is nigh for this kind of stuff. I mean, it's a strange one, but it's not just about his life and this will be a section of the film. It's about him starring his own line of video games.
I think that I was going to bring up exactly the same thing. If it was just a biopic about him getting into being a commentator for the NFL, which I'm sure is as interesting as going into the games industry.
Yeah, I would say more interesting, especially at that time, as it was like, from what I understand, to be like at least early on in the not the sport but the league's life. Like that's probably interesting to have document speaking to people about who were around back then.
I think so, and I think we were right, or specifically yourself, that video games are just hot right now. Video games in cinema are hot. So if you put that plot line in, they think it's going to sell more. I'm going to say Vox Ludio is a place to come for your gaming prophecies. That's what we are. We're the Cassandra of the gaming space.
We are the Nostradamus of gaming YouTube predictions.
Prove us wrong.
My next one is that Naughty Dog are working on a new single-player IP and possibly ditching the Last of Us multiplayer game altogether.
Oh, that's good. For the best.
Interesting words, but yes. The creators of Crash Bandicoot and Uncharted, and of course The Last of Us, they've quietly moving focus away from this currently, I believe, unnamed multiplayer version of The Last of Us. I think there was a multiplayer mode within Last of Us, factions, I believe. Someone will instantly correct me if I'm wrong in the comments.
Wasn't it kind of based on Uncharted's multiplayer quite heavily?
I'll trust your opinion. I have literally no idea.
That's pretty surface level.
I only know of its existence because there is a trophy that mentions it, but
Ah.
I know nothing beyond that. Yeah, this was reported via Bloomberg that staff are just being shifted away from this project and onto a quote unquote brand new single player experience. And that is as far as they've elaborated on that thing. But given their track record of things like Last of Us, like Uncharted, they're probably good people to trust with such a thing. Now, this is because the shift away has apparently they've taken a look at the long term viability of this game. It's been raised, and the company as a whole is reevaluating their direction, quote unquote. They had a PlayStation showcase recently. This was not shown, and all they did was kind of give an apology / reason, like, sorry, it wasn't there. It's not good enough, so we're not showing it. Proven via history from people like Nintendo mostly to be a good move. Don't show something if it's bad, or generally people would go, oh, we'll lie and we'll show only cinematic footage on a high-end PC and say it was on a Super Nintendo. Now, I've got a theory on this, Matt, and I'll run it by you.
Okay.
I think so. Obviously, Last of Us blew up. The series was made. Everybody liked it, both gamers and non-gamers. It was just appreciated as a piece of work in of itself. I think Sony, whoever, went to Naughty Dog and said, we want you to make a cash cab game. We want it to just make it something that purely just makes money, full of microtransactions, give it a shop, give it a battle pass, give it whatever. And they started doing this begrudgingly, and then eventually someone's turned around and gone, this is going to be awful. We can't make this good, or we can't bear ourselves to make this. This is going to kill The Last of Us as a brand. And I think people are slowly going, okay, fine. But you have to then we've said, look, this new single player game, if you let us divert resources to it, we will earn twice as much as what this game would have done.
I think you are exactly right. Before I heard you talking, like, I don't read your news segments before we do this. And when you said ditching The Last of Us multiplayer, the first thing I said was good. And that is why, because you know what that means. When they're saying The Last of Us multiplayer, that's someone in a boardroom saying, oh, The Last of Us is massive right now, how do we make more money out of this? And Naughty Dog are doing the exact right thing and saying it's a solid brand that people actually like, or for the most part. I know Last of Us 2 was really divisive and there were a lot of people who were mad at certain things, but that's a very tasty topic to delve into. But yes, strong brand, TV show was great, the games are well loved. Why spoil the whole thing by trying to make The Last of Us Warzone or something?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, agree with me. I think, well, I try and give a back question to you rather than just saying things and then moving on. Do you think now we've entered a phase of, because, you'd get a game, right? You'd get, say, off the top of my head, Gears of War. Gears of War had a single player campaign and a multiplayer. Do you think now we will see, or are starting to see, the death of that? You don't just get attacked on multiplayer game anymore. You're either making a single player game or you're making a multiplayer game. And are those two divisions being driven apart now?
I think it's been a slow evolution, like from Call of Duty, right? I mean, you could go before that and say like 007 Nightfire and like Time Splitters and stuff, where you had a multiplayer mode with a single player game, pre Xbox Live, way back in the day. And I think it became normalized through that arcadey style gameplay, and then it started to make quite a lot of money, and it became the focus of like MW2, Blops, and then games wanting to emulate them because they're making so much money. So you get like the multiplayer mode in Bioshock 2, which I didn't mind, but also why was it there? Like, it really didn't need to be there.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I think we both actually did. And people I've spoken to have been like, yeah, that was really good. But again, it had absolutely no place being there.
Yeah, like they did do, I think, probably the best job you could do making a multiplayer game out of Bioshock. They picked a really good like thematic wrapping for the whole experience. Like all the weapons were there and stuff. It was well done.
It was the breakdown of Rapture, but it was New Year's Eve.
Yeah,
And it was like, okay, there's like, oh, you've given me a reason. It's not just we're randomly going around shooting people. You've added some context to it. You've making an effort.
it was good. But the question still remains: why was it there? The only reason anyone even brought up that conversation, I guarantee you, is because it was like, oh, they make a lot of money, and also people like to make YouTube content about their multiplayer matches, and that's like free marketing at that time in history. A lot of people made a lot of money on YouTube with nothing more than Call of Duty videos. So if you can break into that space, all of a sudden, whole other audience people looking at your game. And then we've moved past it, and we had that phase where it was like, oh god, death of single player games. Nobody makes good single player games anymore. And then Sony was like, fuck that. Here's a bunch of great single player games. And I think, yeah, there's just this natural separation that's come about. My final thoughts. My Jerry Springer final thoughts.
Take me to the corner, Jerry. Tell me what you think. My final one is that Nintendo, the company that everybody loves outside of their games, ahead of the launch of the Dolphin emulator on Steam, which would allow people to play Wii and GameCube games. Anyone that knows a bit of inside information, I believe GameCube was called Project Dolphin.
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo said, hold it in Phoenix Wright style fashion and put the kibosh on that by issuing a cease and desist order to the creators. Currently, the project is indefinitely postponed. There's a lot of legalese that I had to wade through when looking this up about the specific thing that Nintendo are complaining about. They're not complaining about the emulator existing. It's about how it goes about its means of acquiring Nintendo IPs.
Yeah.
It's very odd.
It's just not legal. Like, there's no way you can spin that.
Yeah, but they're making a very specific complaint about this thing. To quote them, they're claiming that the project itself illegally circumvents Nintendo's protection measures and runs illegal copies of the game. They also say that they being emulators, harm development and ultimately stifles innovation. That I'm not so sure about.
Don't agree with that.
Hang on, Nintendo. People are just trying to play games from 20 years ago. And if you supported it, maybe people wouldn't go to emulators, but different conversation for a different day.
Yeah.
And there's actually a lot of people that are saying, that are looking around this case, mostly predominantly legal people, that whatever the outcome of this case is when it finally reaches court, or if reaches court, will kind of set a precedent on what happens for emulators going forward.
Okay.
And I don't know. They're popping up everywhere. You can set up a site in the next half an hour and run an emulator on it if you've got that. I just don't know how you're gonna play legal whack-a-mole with that kind of stuff. If anyone's going to, it's going to be Nintendo.
There is absolutely no way. Like, you can... Well, I know a site where you can just play any game that was released probably more than 10 years ago for free through your browser. What are you going to do about
that? Literally, what are you going to do?
You can't do anything.
My itemic question, Matt, is Nintendo, are they the most out of touch gaming company? And how should they, if so, update or change themselves, modernize themselves? What should they do? We spoke briefly about this with Tears of the Kingdom last episode.
Oh yeah.
About how, do you think that they're, I mean, technologically they're always considered behind everybody else, right?
Yeah, I mean, they are.
They are objectively like one generation hardware wise behind everybody else. What do you think they need to do? I feel like they're kind of, I cherish them from my childhood in the 90s, but I remember, personal anecdote here, I was very pumped for the Wii, played the GameCube, love the GameCube, still love the GameCube, one of my favorite controllers ever. And then I saw the Wii remote, and I said, I was in my teens, and I just went, absolutely not. No. Give me a controller, get out.
Yeah, so specifically with this story, I agree completely with what Nintendo are doing. And I think it would be irresponsible of Valve to allow an emulator to release on Steam, personally. I think it makes them look real bad. Because they are, as much as they're easy to get hold of and they're easy to play games on and they're kind of ubiquitous, they are illegal. Unless you own the console And sometimes that's not even true for certain consoles. You have to own the console and the copy of the game that you want to play to legally play an emulator. And like I said, sometimes that's not even correct. So them giving a cease and desist is absolutely fine. And yeah, Valve should never have thought of having it open on their platform, in my opinion. Irresponsible.
I'm surprised that Valve kind of didn't take them to one side and say, look, guys, that we know everybody plays emulators, but we can't, in good faith, have, like, our name's too big.
Can't condone it.
To be saying, we just can't okay this because we're too public, too big. And, like, if we get sued, we're not going to get sued. They'll have a go at us, but we're going to be like, no, it's these guys, you know. So I'm surprised they were like, no, let's just go ahead with it. I'm surprised it's got this far.
Although the amount of trash that they let on their platform, I don't even know what I'm talking about, to be honest. Like some of the games, like raw asset flips made from packs someone bought online, and they get sold. So there's no quality control on Steam really, besides the players. Is Nintendo out of touch? Yeah, kind of. They just are a bit. You know, it's a Japanese company. They do things a bit differently. They're a bit slower on the modernization, I think, in that part of the world. It's a bit more traditional, even down to company structure and stuff. And when we say that their consoles are lower spec, I think, and that we have a different memory of them from when we were young, I think that means they did exactly what they wanted to do with their consoles. Because I know that Nintendo's whole thing is that their consoles are toys. They're toys before they're anything else. So they're a lot more appealing to us when they're younger. Then the older we get, it kind of like, oh, okay, this isn't as good as something else. I can't do as much. Start to realize that. To change themselves, I think they have the perfect niche in the industry, and that's why they're so successful. So I actually don't think they should. I still respect their games. I like them when they come out. I'll play them, and they provide like a completely different experience to any other dev.
I respect your opinion, and John, people are going to be sick of us just agreeing with each other.
Well, you know.
But I only echo what you think, basically. So yeah,
We were friends for a decade.
Yeah, that's largely because we think alike. So
yeah,
I wouldn't have started this podcast for someone that I fervently don't enjoy speaking to.
Yeah. Friendship Simulator, Vox Ludio Edition.
So that's my news wrapped up for another episode, and now we move on to the question. But first, we have some comments to get to, Matt.
We do. This is exciting. I think this is the second time or third time ever we've had comments.
I believe it is, yeah.
So, from last week, where we were talking about meta, fourth wall breaking humour in general, and we started talking about games, and we were both like, I can't really think of any meta games. I think we spoke a little bit about the Stanley Parable, but we didn't really go very far with it. We have an excellent comment. The Psycho Mantis fight from Metal Gear Solid. How could we forget that?
Do you know what? Yeah, Metal Gear Solid just as a whole, unbelievable. Like, Hideo Kojima, possibly one of the most innovative people to make video games, in my opinion. But I don't think you'd find... He'd be cracking people's top 10s easy, top 5s probably.
Yeah, for sure. And he's like a sane version of Suda51. We like.
Yes, that's a very good way to describe him. I wouldn't be surprised if that's how he described himself on his website.
But can you think of also in that game, in MGS, the codec number that you have to call is actually on the case, and I remember being lost as hell when I got to that part of the game, and I think someone tells you've got to check for the codec number on the case, and I was going around the part of the game that I had at that point, and I was like, what do you mean on the case? Like, it's on nothing I have in my inventory. Physically on the game's case, on the back, was the number that you had to call in the game. How sick is that?
Being like, Colonel, what do I do?
I was so stuck. But I can't think of any other mechanics like that, personally.
A side note to that, I know that Kojima made 2 games before he made that, and if you had a save of either of those games on your memory card, Mantis would comment and say, oh, you like playing these games, you've got very good taste.
Didn't he do that with any game? Or was it just like the good taste line because it was a Kojima game?
I think they did that specifically with that. It was like he would mention these two games, and they were games that Kojima made.
Oh, that's
But
sick.
in Twin Snakes, I specifically remember I had a save from either Wind Waker or Master Quest, and he was like, "You like playing Zelda games? Oh, that's very good."
That's so cool. Like, it just takes you, I don't know, it like envelops you for a second, and you're like, whoa, this game's going to the next level.
Yeah, the fact that you then had to, because it's like it's an obvious in quotes to just take it out, take the controller out, and put it in the next port. But that's like it's like the definition of out of the box thinking.
Yeah, it's like mind blowing.
Do you know about the end in Metal Gear Solid 3?
Is that the one where you can wait for him to die of old age?
Yeah, and you can either wait a week or you can set your PlayStation's clock forward a week, and he'll just die.
I like that. See, that's fun. That's a fun little mechanic. But I honestly can't think of anything even similar to that. What I was going to say is outside of like very, very, very old games like DOS era, where you'd get a manual that would like explain certain parts of the world or give you like a little notes area for you to write down your progress or a map you could draw on. Like that's the only other comparison I can really think of in terms of you having to physically affect yourself and your playing of the game in order to progress effectively in the game.
I can think of a very minor, coming off the back of the MGS stuff is very low tier, but there's been a few achievements that are like date related. So like I remember there was one in Arkham City where you had to go see Calendar Man on 12 specific dates,
Mm.
and then that would unlock an achievement. But again, you could just disconnect your Xbox from the internet and then set it to each of those dates, so you could get it in like an hour.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, Halo has some stuff with that as well, where if you play certain maps on certain days, there's like messages there and things like that. So
That's pretty
that's
cool.
like, yeah, another level, but nothing MGS tier.
No.
If you know any other cool stuff in MGS, let us know, because there is a lot of cool stuff in that.
Yeah, in MGS or in any game, can you think of any other mechanic like Psychomantis reading your memory card, having to look at the game box to figure out codec numbers, like anything like that? Next comment was about a Metroid movie. From us talking about the rise of video game movies, would we watch Samus Aran, the film?
I would, yes, if they, as long as they didn't get like a major Hollywood movie actress to play her, because I think you wouldn't get a purist film. You'd have to get an up and comer or like an undiscovered star, because it wouldn't matter, right? If you're going to wear a helmet for the 90% of the film.
Do you know what? You read my mind. Again, we're agreeing. What's going on tonight? I would not want to see her for 90% of the film. If you want to do the reveal at the end, like the old Metroids, where she takes off her armor at the very end, sure, as like the victory. And also, we'd need someone with some thickness about him, because I don't mean that in a pervy way. I mean that in an MMA fighter kind of way. Samus Aran kicks ass. Like,
she's a bounty hunter. Do you know what? Do you know who I would be if like someone like Ronda Rousey could do it?
You want like a female wrestler or a Ronda Rousey. Although she is a wrestler now, isn't she?
Technically, yeah, she's quite a popular wrestler actually. She only wrestles like maybe 4 dates a year, but
what the hell? She's living the high life for a wrestler, right? She should be absolutely battering her body and have a painkiller addiction by now.
If she's in the Attitude Era, she would have,
yeah. But yeah, it needs to be someone who can kick ass, and we don't want to see him. They've got to be in that armor, fighting Ridley the whole time.
Which is, I think, it's probably quite hard to sell a movie on that, because you're like, okay, I'll go see this film. Who's in it? Oh, we won't show you them for 90% of it.
I mean, Dredd did it with Carl Urban.
You could at least still see an element of his face, though. I think that's the thing. It's like,
yeah, true.
I've watched a movie on it's called the Hollywood Helmet Problem, and how like the Mandalorian managed to crack that. But like, how do you connect with someone who you can't see their face for 90 minutes?
That's very true.
But yes, I would go watch a Metroid movie if they did it right and actually owed to the source material. But if they'd have to start with either Zero Mission or Fusion.
Ooh, I think Zero Mission out of those two.
Chronologically, yes, and then you can move on to Fusion, because Fusion kind of starts. It's like quite far along in the timeline. I think that game was fucking sick. Possibly one of the best Game Boy Advance games ever made.
Isn't Fusion the Game Boy Color one, and Zero Mission is like it was released later but set earlier?
So Zero Mission is they were both Game Boy Advance, and Zero Mission was like a remake of Metroid 1, but with added sections where she was in. That's where Zero Suit Samus first came in.
Okay, yeah, it was Zero Mission I played, not Fusion. But yeah, Metroid movie is 2 thumbs up over here. Here's the question I'm going to leave lingering. Should it be animated?
Ooh, animated spin-off maybe.
Kind
of like Dead. Do you know what? While we're here, we will get onto the question eventually, I promise. The 2 animated Dead Space films, Downfall and Aftermath, really good. Yeah. Only like an hour long, but very good.
Are they actual films? I thought they were animatics, weren't they? Or am I thinking of another Dead Space bit of media?
Are they like anime? I guess, yeah, they officially probably count as anime. But
sorry, not anime, animatics. So they're not actual like cartoons. They're like it's more like a comic book that moves a bit.
Oh, I think you're thinking of Dead Space Ignition, and they have the comic book stylings.
Yes.
But no.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, hang on, I've seen Downfall. He's gaslighting me right now. I've seen that animation.
Sam, it was a book. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it was stop motion. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I watched Claymation Dead Space. God, I probably would watch that actually.
It was made by Aardman. What are you talking about?
Sorry, God.
The question this week is: how credible is gaming journalism in current year? I'm going to throw it to Matt because I have many things to say.
I have not much to say.
I'll let Matt get his points of the way first, because if he's got to wait for me to ramble, then what's the point?
It won't be rambling, Sam. It will be entirely educational. Essentially, my take on this question is, it's bad. I don't use it. I only look at scores and reviews, but whenever I do, I take them with a massive pinch of salt, depending on the outlet that's giving it. Does Kotaku technically brand itself as a gaming journalism outlet? Or is it just pop culture? I don't even know.
I don't know what they are. Yeah, like nerd culture.
Because that's always absolute tosh. Like,
if you want the worst takes, if a terrible article has come out, it's a safe bet that it's come from Kotaku.
It's like laughably bad. And in fairness to IGN, I think they're cresting out of their give AAA games 10 out of 10 phase. I feel like some of the reviews are becoming slightly more honest. But yeah, in general, when I'm looking to, like, when I do the releases, actually, I'll try and look at as many small creators as I can, look up gameplay for myself, go on Metacritic and read people's reviews, and read the Steam page, generally. I try and go to as many different sources as possible, and I do read the big ones, but I always just make my own opinion, and I take everything that any big outlet says with a massive pinch of salt. What about yourself?
So,
here we go. Buckle up.
This subject is closer to my heart because I write about video games, and I lament for what video game journalism has become, and I don't even like using the phrase. So to me, journalism as a whole, when I think of journalism, I think of people in war zones trying to let people know who aren't there what is happening in different parts of the world, or like uncovering political scandals, things like that. That's journalism. I write about video games. That's what I do. But it's become mainly from places like Kotaku, less so from IGN, but Polygon, a lot of places like that. It's become like a weird political battleground, which is strange because I feel like the audience for that is really not there for that. You know what I mean? Like, you couldn't be preaching to a worse crowd. They're not there for that rhetoric, you know?
Is it a sign of the times? Because the world is so... Well, and again, I don't know whether this is our age, but to me it seems like the whole world is so heavily politicized right now that like it's kind of bleeding into everything.
Yeah, so I've got a theory that, again, that I don't consider what I do. I've written for some websites before. I've written a few scripts for some YouTube videos that done like fairly well. Within general speaking, it's not like got like millions of views, but actually one did, and they didn't give me credit for it, the bastards. Anyway, I'm not bitter about it. I think that people that work in video games, let's be honest, it's a fantastic medium. It's my favorite medium of all time.
Mhm.
but it's not considered. It's not sitting at the same table as Hollywood, right?
No.
Movie stuff, and even that, and you've got proper journalism. But movie reviewers and stuff, that's at least they're an adjacent table. We're sat at kind of like the kiddie table of journalism. And what I think the motive behind all this politically charged stuff is that in order to be taken seriously, they're like, no, video games are really socially and culturally important. Look at the impact they have, and it's a driving force that they are so politically important because they have to have all this representation, and they're just as important to stuff as films are, that they should be taken seriously, and so they don't care how many reviews and stuff or articles have you read where it's almost like, can we get to the game now, or you've not said anything about that game yet,
Yeah.
and that's my theory, that it's like, no, we should be taken seriously as journalists because games have cultural, political, social importance. That is my theory behind that. That is why they've become that way.
To jump in on that a bit as well, you saying, trying to get a seat at the big boy table. I completely hear that, and I can also understand why they do that, because it's like a really basic shortcut. You know what I mean? Like, to make something sound impactful. Route. When really, video games are impactful because of the way they ignite people's creativity and like the memories that you end up crafting that live with you forever, that can surround a video game experience. They have a way of like touching people's minds and spirits, not to get too flowery, but you know what I mean? They really pull something out of people. It's that's what makes them impactful, not because of some political jargon you want to attach to it.
I think they're the perfect cross-section between media and art. That's what I believe them to be, and that's why I love them so much. And I don't want them to be anything else. Like, just be fun. It's almost like, and it's even bled into the almost creative stuff, certainly in Hollywood, but not as much in games, where it's like, being a good game doesn't matter as long as it says the right things and is about the right stuff, And I don't want to make this political. To full disclosure, I'm probably like, I don't know, center left, but as people are like, oh, well, you don't, you got to be on one side or the other. I agree with stuff on the right. I agree with some stuff on the left.
I'm a lefty.
Cool. I'm probably more left leaning,
yeah,
than I am to the right.
Well, I think I'm a lefty, but then sometimes I speak to people and I feel like I'm an absolute fascist. I don't know what's happened to me. Another thing you could take in terms of making gaming journalism seem a bit more legit is tech. Gaming is usually at the forefront of a lot of tech movements, or at least it has been historically. Next to like medical and military.
Yeah, but like VR and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of applications for it.
Yeah,
it's like a good like testing ground for it. And I can appreciate that you can have an opinion on anything, but that's why not everybody gets paid for their opinions.
True.
Like, I can review a meal at a restaurant, review in very loose terms, but that doesn't make me a food critic. And it doesn't mean someone will pay me to know what I think of bloody Frankie and Benny's,
Yeah.
It seems like the whole political element to the writing, that trumps you knowing what you're doing. It's getting harder now because me pitching to a website and saying, oh, I'd like to write for you. I've played games for the past 25 years. Yeah, you and everyone else your age, you've grown up with them.
Mm.
But if I went in and said, "Oh, I'm this, I agree with these things. I'm all about diversity and inclusion.
I'm an activist."
Not I think it's a bad thing. It's like, "Oh, great, you're hired. You ever played a game before? What's a controller?" It's almost like
it can feel that way.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you can just blag it. Whereas like, if I tried to like review tech and I didn't know what I was doing, which I don't, by the way, which is why I don't do that. I don't get involved or sell myself as an expert. But that's why I think they can only write articles about the things they write about, because they don't know how to review a game properly.
I kind of hear what you're saying. They've come from a background of journalism and being highly politicized, not from a background of game design or studying games or games history or even just playing a lot of games. They might just casually enjoy games and be a political journalist, and therefore their lens on gaming is political when it shouldn't be, in our opinion.
Yes, definitely. Agreed.
I hear you.
An episode of agreements. We'll change. Well, maybe we should change the title.
Yeah, we need to
Am and
find
Matt agree
something.
on everything.
We need to find something more divisive for the next episode. Challenge me, baby.
But if I can round it off, the general stuff that I write list-based stuff, and I'm not kidding myself about like I'm not that's why I hesitate to call it journalism. I'm just writing list-based stuff down, and it's like, oh, can I make it funny? Can I give a bit of value? Because if I'm not giving value, what's the point? Anyway, we can leave it there. Journalism today is rubbish.
Yeah.
Gaming journalism today is crap.
We'll leave it there before you get cancelled.
Don't read Kotaku.
Oh yeah, God. Although I did, in fact, one thing I want to bring up before we do put a close on this. I'm skimming like the notes that we've got, and I've just read the Miles Morales comment, and I want to bring that just to light. If people don't know, I'm not going to say it because it's ridiculous. But who was it? IGN? Was IGN?
Yes, it was IGN, and then. But again, how? Surely that either shows they pay no attention, or everybody who that review went through said, "Cool."
And
don't see anything wrong with that.
When that dude said it, he fucking loved himself. You could hear it in his voice, and my bumhole turned inside out when I heard it.
He was smiling as he said it, and he was like, "God, that's a good line,
like,
mate."
You fucking idiot! What are you doing? Talk about the game, you freak! Jesus. I don't even know if it's still up, but IGN, Spider-Man Miles Morales, PS5. Look up that review.
And the guy playing Cuphead who couldn't beat the tutorial.
Oh god, yeah, he couldn't jump over 2 boxes. Fuck.
Yeah, couldn't press 2 buttons in a row. Very difficult.
Hard
but
game.
he's someone that plays games
for a living, professionally.
So that's it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for listening, as always.
Yeah, thank you for choosing to spend your time here with us. And if you like what you heard, subscribe, press all the buttons that appear under this video. And yeah, you'll get a notification when our new videos go up.
Yeah, and check out the rest of the channel. We've gone mad for the shorts. Matt's done one recently on his take on RoboCop Rogue City, which is interesting, and surprise, surprise, I agreed with him. But yeah, thanks again for listening, and you take care.